Lisa with Hollywood Rock Underground Television and Zombie Wolf Magazine. I am here at Sweetwater Cafe with the incredible Rik Fox.
Howdy.
Howdy.
I, grew up in New York and in Brooklyn. I was part of the infamous 1970s Max's Kansas City CBGB's rock scene. It was like a rock and roll version of Forrest Gump because I was like in all of these key places in time. I rubbed shoulders with a lot of the people who became bigger rock stars later on, the Ramones, and there was the Brats, it was Tough Darts, it was Television, Richard Hell, the New York Dolls. I knew all these people. I wound up playing in the New Jersey club scene, the circuit out there, in a glitter glam band called Virgin. And we had, 8-inch platforms. My singer we did Alice Cooper. He had a 8-foot boa on his, makeup like Alice Cooper. And so I was cutting my teeth early on. I wound up working in the city in the clubs. I was doing lights for a lot of bands, a lot of mid-range touring bands at a club called the Great Gildersleeves, which is just up the street from CBGB's. And then I wound up moving back to Jersey, and I got a phone call from a group called the E. Walker Band. They were like what I call a live jukebox. They did everything from Joe Jackson to Judas Priest and everything in between. Doors, this, that, and the other. And they said, well, we heard about you. We'd like to have you come check us out. Maybe you'd like to join the band. So I went and checked them out, and I said, okay. And it was a steady paycheck. 6 nights a week. It was cash. And I was playing, 4 or 5 sets a night. And then after that, about a year, we went to Toronto. We toured up there for a little bit under the name Spitfire. And then after we came back, their potential management record thing didn't happen. So I got together with another guy who's a friend of mine, and we formed a band called Aggressor. And that was Dave Ferrara. He was one of the guitar virtuosos on Mike Varney's U.S. Metal series. So we named the band after his song that was on one of the albums. And I was playing again in the clubs in upstate New York and whatnot. And that's when, through a series of events, I wound up becoming invited to Los Angeles to audition for a group called Sister. And that was Blackie Lawless who contacted me. He got my number, he called me up. And he talked me into coming out here, so I did. I auditioned for the band. History obviously will bear out that I got the gig, although to this point Blackie denies that ever happened. It's something he won't talk about. It's become one of the biggest controversial hot ticket items now, I guess, in social media, about the Rik Fox in W.A.S.P or not thing. So
Why do you think that is? Why do they think?
I really can't speak for Blackie. His track record speaks for itself, and I don't want to. Surely, I don't want to get accused of Blackie bashing. There's enough people out there who do that, and he's got quite a retinue of personal fans who, no matter what he does, good or bad or indifferent, they still are loyal to him, and that's cool. We did a demo tape of about half a dozen of the songs that wound up on the first album. My bass playing that's on the demo. It's all over YouTube. People can hear the difference. It's a lot more melodic than what Blackie played himself on the album. So if you're that happy with the band, or you're that happy with the personnel in your band, and you go to the trouble of then scheduling a band photo session, that's a clear indication to me that nothing's wrong, that everybody's happy. Don Atkins Jr., who did the first Motley Crue photos, Motley Crue's photographer, we did photos at his session at his parents' house, and there it is. There's the pictures of the band. And at some point in between all of that, I was on Blackie's telephone when I was living at his little rental cottage in Hollywood, and I was on the phone with somebody from New York. I'm walking around the courtyard. There's a huge avocado tree, and I'm just like kicking over leaves with my feet. And I kicked over a leaf, and there was a bug moving, and I quick stepped on it, and I moved the leaf again. And as I say in my interviews, it was a hornet. Black and yellow with the stripes and the stinger and the tail moving, and it was curled. It was dying. It wasn't dead yet. but it reminded me of the old Green Hornet logo from the '60s. And it's curled like that, and it's stinger, and it has this optic pattern. Suggests movement. So I went back in the house and I said, "Hey, Blackie, I got an idea for a band name." Well, he didn't want to use Sister anymore. We had White Sister out here. There was Twisted Sister in New York. He told me he was looking for a new identity, a new band name. He wanted to do something new and different and fresh. And I said, I have this idea for a band name. It's like this watching the Yankees game. And he goes, "What?" And I said, "W.A.S.P." He's like, "That's a good idea." So I like that. Keep thinking like that. That was it. When we went to rehearsal a night or two later, he tells Randy Piper and Tony Richards, he says, "We've got a name for the band." And Randy goes, "Well, I wanted to call the band Hellion, because that's what we call bad kids in Texas." And I said, "Randy, there already is a band in LA named Hellion." He goes, "Ah, shit." And so Tony says, "Well, what's the band name?" And Blackie goes, "W.A.S.P." Tony goes, "W.A.S.P? Who names a band after a bug?" And I said, "The Beatles? Scorpions?" And they laughed a little, but that was it. And then from that point on, come to find out, Blackie was going around the clubs telling everybody he came up with a new name for the band. It was W.A.S.P. And that was before the periods. So I started drawing up artwork, logos, and things, and I drew up something that was reminiscent to the Green Hornet logo, which I still have. There's a copy of it in Darren P. Upton's book, W.A.S.P. Sting in the Tail, his W.A.S.P. biography. It's on Facebook, it's on the internet, so it's a copy of my original artwork. After I left the band, he added the periods, and so it's open to interpretation. It means whatever you want. But since the joke now is, with all these different players that pass through the ranks of W.A.S.P., it actually probably most likely or most seriously means we're all side players. Because it's Blackie and side players. So that's the inside joke, and that's how the name of W.A.S.P. was born. My copy of the demo was in the backseat of a car with a lot of my record collection. I was getting ready to move from one place to another, and where we had the car parked, it got stolen. It wasn't my car, but the car got stolen. It was set up to be stolen. It got stolen, and whatever was in the back seat was gone. Whatever was in the trunk was still in there, but in the back seat was my cassette tapes, and that was my W.A.S.P. demo. So whoever stole the car went through my stuff and saw what they had, and they must have known the value of what it was, because it began being tape traded all around the world, pirated and tape traded, and I did my own artwork on it, my rendition of what an album cover would look like, and I had taken it to a copier place, reduced the photo of the band, and with all this kind of lettering, fancy lettering, I wrote "Face the Attack," as if I'm envisioning what an album would look like.
Right.
W.A.S.P. Face the Attack. So everybody around the world thought that's what it was. The demo was called Face the Attack. There's no such thing. It officially does not exist. It's not a government conspiracy. It has nothing to do with UFOs or New World Order. It's just a name that I made up. And everybody, not knowing this until we get the word out now, thinks that that cassette tape demo was called Face the Attack. It's not. The pressure of all of this, unavoidable issues has finally manifested to some very small level of acknowledgement where it became, well, he was in the band for a couple of weeks and it didn't work out. A couple of weeks. This is more like 4.5 months. And by some standards, that's not a lot. Some people say, well, that's your career in W.A.S.P. is 4 months. Hey, you know what? Blackie says he was in the New York Dolls. Well, he told me he was in the New York Dolls for 2 weeks. Turns out, for the very last 2 weeks of the very last tour of the New York Dolls, replacing Johnny Thunders, who was on heroin. Information was passed back and forth, and come to find out, Blackie was not really in the band for the last 2 weeks. He was in the band for the last 2 shows. And if he says he's in the New York Dolls and nobody discounts that, then why should it be discounted or dismissed that I was in W.A.S.P. longer than he was in the New York Dolls? But Darren Upton, who wrote the W.A.S.P. biography, told me, you have been the center of this division between W.A.S.P. fans. There's, for the first several albums up until, I think, Crimson Idol, and then from Crimson Idol on, there's these other fans. And they argue back and forth at each other about your position and your part of history in the band. And I'm glad that you came forward and filled in a lot of the missing puzzle pieces that us fans don't know about. And we're wondering, well, what is the story with the early origins of the band beyond what Blackie says publicly or on his website? And they say, well, how come he doesn't acknowledge you? And I said, you know what, that's up to him. You know, he claims to be a Christian. He claims to say, well, I have to look in the mirror every day and live with myself. And, you know, I have to be responsible for my actions. Things like he says at the last Swedish rock concert festival interview he did. And it's just, you know, it's pure hypocrisy, really, because he's saying all these things about being a Christian and having to live with himself. And yet at the same time, he's in denial and trying to censor an actual part of W.A.S.P history that the fans want to know about.